My Mother Ran Off with the Butcher is a short story I wrote while pondering the bad lady in The Downfall of the Belly Dancer, my second book. Well, this is an older cover, but she lives in a teepee, and I reckon you'd need a pretty interesting backstory to end up in one. I think I've almost got it in this story. So here we go. My mother ran off with a butcher. My gran called her a harlot. My aunt a piece of work. Well, my dad grew a beard and stopped eating meat. I was 10 at the time, and while my dad built a bonfire out of her things, I, clutching the one crumpled photo I managed to rescue, wondered what I did to make her leave. I hated the butcher, scowled every time I passed, which was a complete waste of time, as there was 3 in our village, and I had no idea which one the so-called sex on legs worked in. Until that is, I found out it had been a butcher's van. According to my gran, she jumped in and never looked back. Apparently, watching him roll a meatball had her weak at the knees, a phrase that took me several Barbara Cartland books to get the gist of. "She ruins my son," shouted my gran. "He's never been the same. Not since he caught her in that bleeding van, screaming like her fanny was on fire." My gran could be brutal when she wanted. And when she started on the swearing, she always got her metaphors mixed up. I mean, even I, at the ripe old age of 10, knew her fanny on fire was as plausible as my gran swinging from a tree. My aunt shook her head. "He never liked women." Well, not in that way. After a year of not eating anything but vegan pot noodles, my dad ended up in hospital with low iron. There he was, sallow and sad, with my gran on one side, lecturing on the joys of beef, and my mother on the other, telling him there was nothing wrong with a bit of dairy. My dad said nothing, listlessly waiting for the hemoglobin to kick in, when a Viking of a dietitian appeared, claiming there was more iron in a legume than in Thor's hammer. "All butchers are murderers," he declared, and my dad was smitten. Then the Viking, having weirdly shaved his beard off, moved in with my dad, claiming he was a lodger. The lodger hadn't even emptied his bag, and he was in the kitchen knocking up a nut casserole, stating he knew a thing or two about cashews. Within a week he owned the kitchen, and I was ousted. My attempts to please my dad with a cupcake was as forgotten as yesterday's mouldy cheese. My dad thought he was hilarious. Everything he did made him laugh, and soon my gran and aunt had warmed to him too. I, however, sulked. I found the whole thing as perplexing as a menu in Russian. Catching a glimpse of your once-depressed dad laughing with lipstick on can do that to a child. So can a lodger who never uses his bed. But when I asked my gran, she just patted me on the head and said, "Leave well alone, dear." "He's happy," said my aunt. "That's all that matters." I was 13 the day he came out, the day the lodger moved into his room and Dad appeared in a dress, high heels and a wig, and the reddest lipstick I have ever seen. It was the colour of blood. "Cheer up," said the so-called lodger. "It may never happen." It already had. My dad had turned into the worst cross-dresser ever. He turned to me. "What do you think?" I said nothing. He ruffled my hair. "You could call me Mum." "But I have a mum," I said. "The odd birthday card does not constitute a mum," said my gran. "What about Terry?" said Dad. "I'd rather call you Dad," I said. For some reason everyone found this funny. I didn't. I sulked big time. I had been dumped again, this time for a vegan. I seethed. "I wish my dad had never met you," I yelled at the lodger. I wish. I struggled for something to say. "I wish you were still my dad, eating pot noodles." My dad smiled with discomfort. I just saw the smile. Adult humour is confusing, especially when done in drag. I looked at the 4 of them, stunned as caged hens, and thought, they're taking the piss. "It's not funny," I yelled. Before Dad could cuddle me into his perfumed chest, I stomped to my room, following with the sort of door slamming that rattled the cups in the kitchen. "She'll come around," muttered my aunt. I didn't. I sulked and sulked, cursing that so-called lodger as much as I cursed that bleeding butcher, sometimes even wishing Dad was not my dad at all. I dreamed of a mother who understood me, who was, well, normal, and didn't spend her time in the kitchen jazzing up lentils, who didn't greet my friends in frilly aprons and plates of tofu biscuits, or turn up at school dressed in recycled 70 curtains. When I was 16, I decided to look up my mother. I didn't tell a soul. I bunked off school and in my way too tight school uniform sat by the door of the Green Calf. I waited for ages, my stomach in knots, until she finally entered with a flustered, "Oh, sorry, the traffic was a bastard." My heart stopped. I stared at the woman I vaguely remembered from a scrunched-up Polaroid. She was beautiful. Nothing like me. She was as much like me as a hot dog. She was long and slender, while I'm, well, round. I look like I'm breastfeeding with one on the way. While she had hit the hips of a cyclist and looked like she lived on coffee and dry biscuits. She pulled up a seat and she slid off her pink jacket to reveal more pink. I was speechless. Everything was pink, from her nails to the lace on her bra poking from her blouse. Even her hair was pink. She was pinker than a pink pig. She giggled. "Cappuccino," said the waitress, like she knew my mother. My mother nodded. The waitress turned to me. "I'll have the same," I said. "And a plate of chips," said my mother, eyeing my belly. I watched my mother sprinkle nutmeg onto the foam of a cappuccino like she was in a film. "Dad hates spices," I said. "He threw every single one out when you left." She smiled at me with a, "Oh," grew his hair long and became a vegan. She blew on her coffee. "You're so like your father," she said. "Dad, how am I like him? He has the body of a string bean." "You're intense," she said. I looked at her, wondering how she knew that after one coffee. "No one's ever called me that before," I said. She laughed. "And his sense of humour." "Sense of humour? Since when has staring into space been funny?" I stopped, remembering his lentil jokes. I thought of Dad's silly walk, which he didn't think was silly. I thought of how he asked me all the time what I thought. Then I looked at my mother. Her pink lips pursed over her coffee. She hadn't even asked me once. By a third cappuccino, she pulled out a photo of her and the so-called sex on legs. He was strong-looking man with the sort of face children liked, not like my dad, whose Dame Edna Everage get-up made babies cry. She said she and the butcher were ecstatic and made jokes about his sausage. "We Scottish like them square," she said. "Not him. He prefers rissoles with sauce oozing out of every orifice." "Rissoles? Orifice?" I muttered. She laughed her head off. "Just a play on words, love." That night, I stared at the TV, pondering the endless chips and my mother. I'd have liked to say that it was a aha moment, that I felt a bond, but to be honest, it was more a "so you're my mother" moment. My mother was as foreign to me as the Chinese, and despite her taking pink to a whole new level, I couldn't help feeling a little let down. My mother had painted a picture of a woman strangled by the boredom of living with a man who was never truly there, and without touching a chip. Not one. "But why did you leave without me?" I wanted to say. I hadn't. Instead, I stuffed the remaining chips curled up on the plate into my mouth, one by one, as my mother watched and ordered more. I still felt full, so full I could hardly touch my tea that night, which had my gran wondering, claiming that I normally wolf things down and asked for seconds. "Just not hungry," I muttered. She eyed me, watching TV. "You hungry now?" she said. I shook my head. Dad chuckled in his room. He was trying on a new look. Finally, with a ta-da from the lodger, he appeared in a lime green outfit with matching heels. "What do you think?" he said. Gran turned down the TV. My aunt put on her glasses. "I'd lose the scarf," said my aunt. Oh, absolutely, said Gran. He turned to me, and for the first time I saw that the only opinion he cared about, the only approval he was waiting for, was mine. I smiled at him. He beamed back. His face lit up like I was giving him £1,000,000. Dad, I said, I like the get-up. I think pink is way more your colour. In fact, I reckon you could take pink to a whole new level. So I hope you enjoyed that, and it hasn't put you off pink or lime green or even sausages. Until next time, happy reading.